My name is Lena Harper. I'm 19 years old, and right now I'm writing this from a tiny office above a laundromat that technically belongs to my rich uncle, but somehow ended up feeling like mine. My boyfriend Ethan is the one who keeps saying, Lena, if you don't write this down, you're going to convince yourself it wasn't that bad. He says I minimize things, that I talk about sleeping in my car the way other people talk about pulling an all-nighter to study. So, this is me trying not to minimize it. This is the long version. The version where I admit how bad it really got before things changed. To tell it right, I have to start 5 years ago, when I still thought the worst thing that could happen to a person was losing a parent. I was 14, starting high school, worried about algebra and whether my bangs made my forehead look huge. My dad had been tired for a while, but we all blamed his job. He taught middle school science and worked extra shifts at night tutoring kids whose parents couldn't afford real prep courses. He'd come home late, smelling like expo markers and cheap coffee, drop his bag at the door, and say things like, Lena, if anyone can conquer quadratic equations, it's my kid. So when Mom sat me down one random Tuesday afternoon in our yellow kitchen that always smelled like garlic and dish soap, I thought she was about to tell me we were getting a dog. She didn't look like someone about to say the word cancer. She looked wrong. Her lipstick was still perfect. Her hair was still sprayed into place, but her eyes were huge and empty, like she'd left herself somewhere else. He has stage 4 pancreatic cancer, she said, and the world tilted just a little. I remember staring at the chipped edge of our kitchen table, the stain where I'd spilled grape juice when I was 8. My brain latched onto that instead of the word terminal. The next 6 months felt like watching a movie of someone else's life, the kind where you keep waiting for the miracle cure that never comes. Dad got sick fast. He lost his hair, then his weight. His favorite Chicago Bears jersey started hanging off him like it belonged to a stranger. The only thing that didn't shrink was his sense of humor. He still made bad puns about my math homework. He'd be lying in bed, hooked up to tubes, and squint at my worksheet. Don't let your mom's cooking kill you before I get back, he joked. The last time they took him to the hospital, like this was just another routine visit, his hand was cold in mine, but his smile was the same lopsided one I'd known my whole life. He died on a Thursday. I remember because Thursdays were pizza nights. We'd been doing that since I was little. Deep dish from the same place 10 minutes away, Dad insisting olives were brain food, and me picking them off onto his plate. That Thursday, instead of arguing over olives, I sat in a hospital waiting room under flickering fluorescent lights, listening to Mom sob into her phone as she called relatives. Somewhere down the hall, a monitor flatlined. I knew it was his, even before anyone said anything. You'd think that would be the moment my life broke. It wasn't. It was more like someone quietly picked up my world and tilted it a few degrees, so nothing sat quite right anymore. The real breaking came later. After the funeral, Mom unraveled in a way that looked, from the outside, a lot like moving on. She started dating 2 months after he died. I need to feel alive, she said, smearing mascara off her cheeks and dabbing on more lipstick in the same motion. Your father wouldn't want me to be miserable forever, Lena. You know how he was. I did. Dad had always told stupid jokes in bad situations. He'd probably have tried to set Mom up with some accountant at work if he thought it would make her laugh again. So I tried to be supportive. I did homework at the kitchen table while Mom came home later and later, smelling like expensive cologne I didn't recognize. Then she met Derek. Derek was the kind of man you could smell before you saw. Sharp cologne, leather, money. Real estate developer, always on his phone, always talking about projects and deals. He started showing up with fancy wine and gifts for Mom, handbags, jewelry, weekend trips to Reset. To me, he brought a single, careful smile and questions that sounded like small talk, but were really inventory. So you're 14, sophomore next year, planning on college? Yes. Ambitious. Good. Your mom deserves a break, you know. I tried to like him. I really did. Ethan always says that's one of my biggest flaws. I try to make myself fit into other people's stories, even when they're clearly not written for me. Less than a year after Dad died, Mom came home with a garment bag and this bright-yet brittle energy. Try this on, she said, hanging the bag on my closet door. Inside was a pale chiffon dress that looked like something out of a bridal magazine, just smaller. What is this? I asked, my voice weirdly small in my own room. Junior bridesmaid dress, she said, like I was slow. Derek and I, we're getting married. It took me a full 5 seconds to understand that the secret Pinterest boards and late night phone calls had turned into something real, and she hadn't told me until after everything was already planned. The wedding was at some ridiculously fancy country club in Newport Beach. White chairs, champagne towers, people in suits that probably cost more than my dad's car ever had. Every time I moved, I could feel eyes on me. Polite, assessing, pitying. Like we were the charity case Derek had decided to sponsor. I spent most of the reception hiding in the bathroom, sitting in a stall with my dress bunched up around my knees, staring at my chipped nail polish. Through the door, I could hear laughter, clinking glasses, my mother's bright, practiced, "I'm just so blessed" voice. Ethan would later ask me, "When did you first realize adults can choose to leave their kids?" And I'd think of that bathroom and the muffled sound of my mother's new life starting without me. But the real punchline came after the honeymoon. Mom and Derek moved into his massive house in Newport Beach. You know, the kind you only see in real estate videos. Infinity pool, tennis court, kitchen island. Bigger than my entire bedroom used to be. The first time I saw it, my stomach did this stupid, hopeful thing. There's room for me here, I thought. We can start over. Maybe this is where it stops hurting. Instead, Mom sat me down in a white-on-white living room that looked like a museum and folded her hands in her lap, like she was delivering great news. "Sweetie, we've been talking about what's best for you," she started. That phrase should be illegal. It never ends well. "Derek's house. It's not really set up for kids," she said. "And your school situation, your friends, we just think you'd be more comfortable in Chicago with your dad's sister. Aunt Lisa has that big house, cousins your age. It'll be so good for you." "More comfortable for who?" I asked. She flinched, just a little, like she'd stepped on something sharp. Then she smiled wider. "This is a huge opportunity, Lena. Lincoln Park is a great neighborhood, and Derek and I will visit all the time." She didn't, but that's later. So that's how, at 15, I got shipped off to Chicago like a package with fragile written on the side that everyone ignored anyway. Aunt Lisa's house in Lincoln Park was huge and beautiful in that cold catalog kind of way. Tall windows, perfect landscaping, hardwood floors that echoed when you walked. Uncle Marcus, my dad's older brother, was technically the owner of half the buildings on the block, but I barely saw him that first week. He was always at the office or checking properties, moving through his own house like a guest. My cousins, Michael and Rebecca, were there, though. We'd been close when we were little. They used to visit us every summer. We'd build blanket forts in our tiny living room, make up elaborate games, argue over who had to be the villain. Back then, they'd thought our cramped house and backyard garden were cozy and fun. Now, at 17 and 18, in their private school uniforms and perfect hair, they looked at me like I was some glitch in their otherwise curated life. I wasn't the fun summer cousin anymore. I was the extra person at their dinner table, the one whose suitcase sat in the hallway too long, whose shoes took up space in the mudroom, whose existence meant their mom had to buy generic cereal sometimes. They never said it outright, not at first. It was in the sighs when I opened the fridge, the way Michael accidentally knocked over my stuff, the way Rebecca laughed when I asked if I could borrow a winter coat because Mom had sent me with California jackets in Chicago, December. "My clothes are kind of expensive," she said with a tiny, apologetic smile that somehow made it worse. "They're not really for sharing." Aunt Lisa was more direct. "I'm happy to help out," she said, standing in the doorway of the guest room that would soon become mine. "But things aren't free, Lena. Even family has to contribute, especially in this economy." I remember blinking at her. "I'm still in high school." She shrugged. "You'll figure it out. Your mom will send some money, but it doesn't cover everything. We have standards to maintain." I thought losing my dad would be the worst thing that ever happened to me. I didn't realize yet that I was about to find out what it felt like to lose a mother without a funeral, to be in a house full of family and feel completely, utterly alone. Upstairs, somewhere behind a closed office door, Uncle Marcus was answering emails and watching reports about property values. He had no idea yet that his investment in my dad's promise was about to collide with my whole messy life. Or maybe he did. Maybe he was already watching. If you'd looked at Aunt Lisa's house from the street, you'd think I'd won the lottery. Brick facade, black shutters, tall windows glowing warm in the winter dusk. Inside, everything matched. Cream rugs, silver frames, candles that were there to be seen, not burned. The kind of place real estate listings call stately. Inside my chest, everything felt wrong. The first week, Aunt Lisa did this brittle version of kindness. She showed me the guest room. Temporarily yours. We're redoing the basement. And made comments like, we'll have to get you some proper winter clothes. California kids don't know anything about coats. She didn't say because your mother didn't bother to send any. She didn't have to. It hung in the air between us. Uncle Marcus was mostly a shadow. I'd see him at breakfast, scrolling through emails on his phone, or hear his shoes on the stairs late at night. He'd nod at me, say, "Morning, kiddo," or "How are the classes?" like a man checking on an investment rather than a niece who'd just buried her father. Michael and Rebecca watched everything. Rebecca was effortlessly pretty in that private school way. Glossy hair, perfect eyebrows, a rotating wardrobe of things that looked simple but probably cost more than my entire suitcase. Michael was lanky, permanently half distracted by his phone, always laughing at something half mean. We had this weird, polite reunion the first night. Aunt Lisa arranged us at the formal dining table like we were props. "Isn't it great your cousin's here?" she said, smiling too widely. "Yeah," Michael said. "Super great." Rebecca nudged him under the table and pasted on a smile. "Of course, it'll be fun." It wasn't. The first time I opened the fridge, Michael sighed like I'd insulted him personally. When I made a sandwich, Rebecca stared at the crumbs on the counter like I'd committed a crime. "You're supposed to wipe as you go," she said lightly. "I was going to," I replied. She just smiled. "Sure, just letting you know how we do things here." How we do things here turned out to mean I could stay, so long as I took up as little space as possible. At first, I told myself it was grief. We were all hurting. They'd lost their uncle. I'd lost my dad. Maybe this was just how some people grieved, by becoming smaller, meaner, more polished. Then Aunt Lisa knocked on my door with an envelope. "We need to talk about expenses," she said, stepping in like she owned the air in the room. Inside the envelope was a handwritten list: room contribution, utilities, food, a total scrawled at the bottom that made my throat close. "I'm in high school," I said again, like maybe this time it would matter. "And?" she asked. "You're almost an adult. We're not running a charity, Lena. Your mother will send what she can, but things are tight. Lincoln Park is not cheap." I thought of Derek's mansion, the tennis court, the marble countertops. I thought of Mom saying "we" about decisions that didn't include me. "Can I get a job?" I asked, hating how small my voice sounded. Aunt Lisa's smile sharpened. "Of course. It'll be good for you. Build character." Later, when I told Ethan this part for the first time, he flexed his jaw so hard I could see the muscle jump. "She charged you rent in high school," he'd repeated, like he was trying to make it sound more real by saying it out loud. "Your aunt charged you rent." "Yeah," I'd said. "Welcome to the Harper extended family." The money Mom sent didn't even cover half of what Aunt Lisa wrote down, and Mom faded. The calls went from daily to weekly to "I'll call you back, I'm at yoga," to nothing. She existed mostly on my phone screen now, smiling on a yacht, laughing at a charity gala, standing next to Derek in a tux with a caption like "so blessed to get a second chance at happiness." Every time I tried to call, she was busy. Every time she texted, it was something like, "Hope you're settling in. Love you," with a heart emoji that felt like a sticker on a crack in a dam. At night, I dreamed about our old kitchen. Dad standing at the stove, humming off key, sauce splattering onto the counter. I'd wake up in a too-perfect guest room, pressed between stiff white sheets, and for a second, I'd forget where I was. Then I'd see the wallpaper that cost more than my entire wardrobe and remember, I hadn't just lost my dad. I'd lost my home, my mother, the version of family I thought was permanent. After the first month, Aunt Lisa knocked again. "We need to adjust your contribution," she said. Adjust meant increase. She blamed property taxes and utilities. I heard, "You're an expense I'd like to turn into profit." I stared at the new number. "I can't pay that," I said. "You can if you work," she replied. "You're smart. You'll figure it out." Rebecca overheard our conversation, of course. She popped her head into my room later, face carefully sympathetic. "I heard there's a 24-hour laundromat hiring," she said. "It's in kind of a sketchy area, but they probably don't care that you're underage." She sounded helpful. Ethan always says, "This is where my optimism almost killed me." "Thanks," I said. "I'll check it out." The laundromat was wedged between a closed-down doll store and a phone repair place that looked like the last time anyone repaired a phone there was before smartphones existed. The fluorescent sign buzzed, some letters half dead. Inside, the machines were old and clunky. The air smelled like detergent and metal, and the heater rattled like it had a grudge. "Midnight to 6?" the owner, Jerry, asked, squinting at me over the counter. You're too young for graveyard. I won't complain about the pay, I said. I'll show up on time. I'll do whatever needs doing. He studied me for a long beat, then shrugged. Fine. Start tonight. Don't get murdered on your way in. Cute. That became the first half of my life. Midnight to 6 a.m. at the laundromat, loading and unloading machines, wiping down folding tables, dealing with every kind of person you can imagine. Exhausted parents washing sheets at 3 a.m., drunk college kids trying to clean vomit out of clothes, people with eyes that never quite focused on you. The cold was the worst. The heater wheezed more than it worked. In Chicago winter, the glass doors frosted white. I wore 2 pairs of socks, thermal leggings under my jeans, 3 hoodies layered until my movements felt clumsy. At around 2 a.m., like clockwork, this homeless guy started coming in. Gray beard, bright eyes, layers of clothes that rustled when he moved. Name's Pete, he told me, like we'd be seeing each other for a while. You're new. Lena, I said. He showed me how to kick the quarter machine when it jammed. Not there, kid, you'll break your toes. Here. And which regulars would come up short, but always pay next time. You're living life on expert mode right now, he said one night, watching me shove a stuck cart free. Most people don't even know beginner exists. I laughed for the first time in weeks. It came out brittle, but it was still laughter. The second job came when Aunt Lisa raised the rent again. There's a gas station near Michael and Rebecca's school, she said over dinner, spearing a piece of salmon. Quick Stop, I heard they're hiring. Quick Stop was exactly what it sounded like. Harsh lights, humming refrigerators, sticky floors. I worked 4 p.m. to 10 p.m., 6 days a week. That meant my schedule looked like this. Laundromat midnight to 6, maybe an hour of sleep. School from 7:30 to 2, homework and snatches. Gas station 4 to 10, home, shower, back to the laundromat. I lived in a constant fog. Coffee became a food group. Michael and Rebecca discovered my second job like it was entertainment. Quick Stop happened to be right by their expensive private school, the kind with a campus that looked like a college and parking lots full of BMWs their parents bought them for practice. Michael and his friends started coming in during my shifts, making a game out of how much chaos they could cause without technically stealing, knocking over chip displays I'd just stacked, accidentally spilling their Slurpees, leaving open bags of jerky on random shelves, laughing when I had to clean up after them. Didn't know you got a uniform, Michael said once, flicking the hem of my polyester Quick Stop polo. You look official. Rebecca was worse, in a softer way. She'd float in with her cheer squad, lip gloss perfect, voice pitched just loud enough to carry. Can you imagine having to work here? She said once, standing 5 feet from me. Like, actually stand behind that counter and smell hot dogs all night? I'd literally die. Her friends giggled, glancing at me and then away, like looking too long might be contagious. They started taking pictures. Me bent over a spill, me hauling a trash bag out back, me under the humming lights looking exhausted and greasy. I'd catch their phones angled in my direction, see the flash of my own reflection. At the public high school I attended, the one Aunt Lisa referred to as fine, I guess, for now. It got worse. Rebecca knew people everywhere. Suddenly, kids I'd never spoken to were leaving quarters on my desk. For the machines, one boy said, smirking. Someone stuck a label on my locker, washer girl. Teachers asked if everything was okay at home. I told them I was adjusting to the move, because how do you explain that your mom married money and mailed you away, that your aunt charges you for existing, and that you're so tired you can't remember what day it is? I started sleeping through classes, my head hitting the desk without warning. My grades slipped, red ink creeping into the margins of my life. At night, I'd stand in the laundromat's doorway, watching the snow swirl under the streetlights and think, this has to be the bottom. It can't get worse than this. Spoiler, it could. Down the block, a black SUV would sometimes idle at the curb, engine running, windows tinted so dark I couldn't see inside. At first, I thought it was cops, or someone waiting for a hookup or a drug deal, or any of the 1,000 scary things your brain invents at 3 a.m. Whoever it was never came in, never rolled down the window, never honked. Just watched. I pretended not to notice. Someone should have told me that in my family, someone watching was never neutral. It was the beginning of another test I hadn't signed up for. If you've never had your whole life fit into the back seat of a rusty Toyota, let me tell you, it's a special kind of grief. Not dramatic grief, not the crying on the floor kind. The quiet kind. The kind that settles behind your ribs like cold air and makes a home there. It didn't happen all at once. Abuse rarely does. It comes as a drip, drip, drip of small humiliations, each one just enough to hurt, but never enough to justify an explosion. Aunt Lisa knew exactly what she was doing. First, she raised the room contribution. Then she raised the utilities. Then she raised the household fee, because everybody needs to pitch in. I was 15. The final push came one Tuesday after my gas station shift. My feet were aching, my uniform smelled like burnt coffee and synthetic hot dogs, and all I wanted was 6 hours of dreamless sleep before my laundromat shift. I opened the door to the basement room, my room, and froze. Everything was torn apart. Drawers dumped out, clothes scattered, my school notebooks ripped open, and on the floor, like a corpse, was my teddy bear. The last thing my dad ever gave me. Stuffing everywhere, the back slit open. And the money I'd been hiding inside, the cash I'd been saving for months, every tip, every crumpled bill Pete slipped me for emergencies, was gone. I could feel my pulse in my fingers. Rebecca poked her head in, eyes wide and fake innocent. "Oh my God, Lena, I was just cleaning. I didn't know you kept money in a teddy bear." She said teddy bear like it was pathetic. "Where is it?" My voice cracked in the middle. She blinked, took a step back. Lena, why are you accusing me? I didn't touch any money." I stared at her glossy hair, her clear skin, her perfect nails. I wanted to scream. I wanted to break something. Instead, I picked up my teddy bear, empty now, sagging in my hands, and walked past her. That same week, Aunt Lisa knocked on my door again. "Rent's going up," she said, waving a fresh envelope. "Property values in the area are rising. You understand." I stared at her. I was 16 now, working 2 jobs, falling asleep in class, being bullied daily, sending my mom voicemail after voicemail. And this woman married to my father's brother, was doubling my rent. "I can't pay this," I whispered. "You'll figure it out," she said cheerfully. "Young people always do." She walked away humming. That night, I sat on my narrow basement bed, holding my ripped teddy bear, staring at the peeling paint. And I realized something with the kind of clarity that hurts. If I stayed, I would drown. The math was simple. If I kept paying Aunt Lisa's rent, I could never afford school. If I chose school, I could not afford Aunt Lisa's rent. So I chose school. I packed what I could fit in my Toyota: clothes, notebooks, Dad's old plaid shirt, the teddy bear, even though it was empty, a single pillow. I left the rest. No dramatic confrontation, no shouting match, just me slipping out at midnight, driving away from a house that never wanted me. The first night sleeping in the car was almost peaceful. I parked behind the laundromat. The alley was lit by a flickering street lamp, and the hum of the dryers inside felt oddly comforting. I reclined the driver's seat all the way back, tucked Dad's shirt under my head, wrapped myself in a stolen pile of blankets from the laundromat's lost and found box, and breathed. For the first time in months, no one judged me for breathing too loud. No one rolled their eyes. No one sighed when I opened the fridge. It wasn't home, but it was mine. Of course, peace is temporary. Winter hit like a fist. Chicago winter doesn't care about your trauma arc. It doesn't care that you're trying your best. It doesn't care that your car heater only works when you kick the dashboard just right. It freezes you anyway. Most mornings, I'd wake up before dawn, shivering so hard my teeth ached. I'd sneak into the laundromat with my work key, warm my hands under the dryer vents, and pretend my fingers weren't turning purple. School became impossible. Try explaining why your homework smells like detergent. Try explaining why you're wearing the same 3 outfits. Try explaining the bruises from sleeping curled up in the driver's seat. My chemistry teacher started sending concerned emails. The school counselor kept inviting me to check-ins. What was I supposed to say? "Oh, don't worry, I live in my Toyota, but it's parked in a very classy alley." So I lied. I said I was adjusting to the move. I said I was a little overwhelmed. The truth felt like a luxury I couldn't afford. And then the humiliation leveled up. Michael, apparently bored, decided to follow me one night after my laundromat shift. He saw me crawl into the Toyota and pull the blankets over myself. The next day, he uploaded a TikTok. My homeless cousin, a documentary. He posted videos of at my frost-covered windows, me studying under the laundromat sign because it was the only light source, me changing shirts in the back seat, barely silhouetted, but enough to make my stomach drop. The videos went viral in the rich kid circle. Soon, teenagers I didn't know were driving past the laundromat at night honking, yelling things out their windows, throwing trash at my car. The first time a cup of soda hit my windshield, I flinched so hard I pulled a muscle in my shoulder. Cops started showing up more too. "Can't sleep here, miss," they'd say, tapping on my window. I'd wait until they left, drive in circles until my gas tank dropped dangerously low, then come back. Nights blurred, days blurred. I started functioning on adrenaline and cheap coffee alone, and through it all, there was that black SUV, always across the street, sometimes 2 spots down, sometimes idling behind the laundromat, engine running, windows too dark to see inside. It didn't honk, didn't throw anything, didn't follow me. It just watched. Once at 3 a.m., I stared at its headlights reflecting in my side mirror and whispered, "Are you a cop? Or a serial killer? Or just bored?" No answer, no movement. I told myself it was nothing. Just some stranger with insomnia, or someone waiting for someone else. I didn't know yet that it was the beginning of everything. I didn't know yet that the person inside that SUV wasn't a threat. He was family. He was watching. He was waiting. He was about to change my life. But not before letting it break a little more. If I had to choose the exact moment my life tipped from barely surviving into something's about to snap, it was the night my car refused to start. -5 degrees. Wind so sharp, it felt like it was slicing through the metal of the Toyota. My phone dead. The laundromat closed for repairs. Dark windows. No heat. No sanctuary. The cold sank straight through my clothes, past my bones, into whatever lives under your ribs where fear curls up and waits. I turned the ignition again, and again, and again. Nothing. Just a dull click, like the car was saying, "Sorry, kid, this is as far as we go." My breath fogged white in front of me. My fingers were turning stiff, skin aching. I pulled every blanket I owned over myself, curled tight, and thought, someone is going to find me like those frozen rats behind the alley dumpsters. Just a small body in a small car. No story, no explanation. I tried to keep myself awake, counting breaths, listing every chemical formula I'd memorized for school, reciting Dad's old science jokes in my head. But the cold was heavy, heavy like sleep, heavy like drowning. My eyelids drooped. And then, knock, knock, knock. A sharp sound on the driver's side window. I jolted awake so violently, I slammed my knee into the steering wheel. Outside, partially lit by the alley's dying street lamp, stood a man in a long, dark wool coat, snow dusting his shoulders, breath visible in the air. I squinted, heart hammering. He knocked again, closer this time, more deliberate. Lena. My name. I blinked hard, trying to bring him into focus. It was Uncle Marcus. Standing in the middle of a Chicago winter at nearly 2 a.m, looking completely out of place and somehow exactly right. He gestured for me to unlock the door. My frozen fingers fumbled. When I managed to open it, a blast of cold air hit me even harder. He leaned down slightly, voice calm, almost disturbingly so. "I think," he said, "we need to talk." I stared at him, chattering. How long have you—" He didn't answer, just stepped back and motioned toward the laundromat's side door. My office has better heating. I'd never been upstairs in the laundromat. Didn't even know it had an upstairs. Turns out it wasn't just an office. It was a whole private space, a small kitchen, a mini fridge, a desk with stacks of files, a bathroom, a couch. Warm, clean, bright. A world above the world I'd been living in. He poured me coffee, real coffee, not gas station sludge, and set it in front of me. I wrapped both hands around the mug, trying to thaw my fingers. Marcus sat across from me, elbows on his knees, just watching me. Not judging, not scolding, evaluating, like he was solving a puzzle. Finally, he spoke. "You know," he said, "your dad and I used to sleep in a car, too." I nearly dropped the mug. "What?" He opened his phone and turned the screen toward me. A photo. 2 teenage boys in an old van, eating beans straight from a can. Blankets piled in the back. A lantern hanging from a hook. "That's your dad on the left," Marcus said, tapping the figure with the goofy smile. Same smile he had when I was little. Same eyes. I swallowed hard. "I never knew," I whispered. "No one did." Marcus leaned back. "We grew up dirt poor. Our mom worked 3 jobs. We still lost our place more times than I can count. Winter was the worst, just like now. But the owner of this laundromat, he let us sleep inside some nights. Let us warm up. Sometimes he'd give us old sandwiches from the vending machine." I couldn't imagine Marcus, this sleek, powerful real estate mogul, huddled in a van, eating canned beans. He must have read the disbelief on my face. "People forget where you came from when you start wearing nice suits," he said dryly. "But your dad never did." He stood and crossed to a filing cabinet, pulled out a folder thick enough to be a small book, set it in front of me. Inside were and old property deeds, hand-drawn business plans, contracts, receipts, all with handwriting I recognized. My dad's. He helped me build all of this, Marcus said, back when no one else believed we could. He had the brains. I had the hustle. We made it work. He looked at me then, really looked, like he was comparing my face to the teenage boy in the van. When he got sick, Marcus continued, voice lower, he made me promise 2 things. I held my breath. 1, look out for you. 2, make sure you learn to look out for yourself. A lump built in my throat. I tried the second one first, he said with a sigh. Harder than I expected. You work 2 jobs, keep your grades up, survive in conditions that would break most adults. You didn't just look out for yourself, you did it with grit. He glanced at the security monitor in the corner, grainy black and white footage from cameras outside the building. I've been watching that SUV for weeks, I said quietly. He shook his head. That SUV wasn't watching you, Lena. He pointed at himself. I was. My breath caught. I needed to see what you were made of, he said, and you showed me more than I bargained for. He reached into his pocket and placed something on the table. A key. I stared at it. It's for the apartment upstairs, he said. This space, yours now, rent-free, on one condition. My fingers shook. What condition? You keep working in the laundromat, and you stay in school. You get your degree. You build something. I don't want charity, I whispered. This isn't charity, his voice sharpened. This is an investment. In you. In your future. In the daughter my brother didn't get enough years with. My eyes burned instantly. He added, softer this time, you've done enough alone. I tried to speak, I really did, but the words collapsed before they left my mouth. Marcus stood and opened the door to the small upstairs apartment, one I hadn't even realized was connected to the office. Inside was a neatly made bed, a tiny stove, a tidy bathroom, and heat that worked. Heat. Go get warm, he said gently. I walked inside, closed the door, sat on the bed, and for the first time in months, maybe years, I stopped shivering. I didn't know yet that accepting this key would blow up everything. Aunt Lisa, my mother, Derek, their lies, their secrets, and the millions they were trying to steal. But that was coming. Very, very soon. The morning after I officially slept in a real bed, a warm bed with heat that didn't depend on kicking a dashboard, I woke up smiling for the first time in months. That lasted 28 seconds. Because when I checked my phone, the screen was full of notifications, missed calls, texts from unknown numbers, 3 voicemails from Aunt Lisa, all of them variations of, "What are you doing in my husband's building? Call me now. We need to talk." I hadn't even had time to panic before the consequences arrived in person. It happened during my afternoon shift at the laundromat. I was folding a stack of towels when the door slammed open so hard a few dryers rattled. Aunt Lisa stormed in. Designer workout clothes, perfect makeup, a fury so sharp it felt like it cut the air. The customers turned to stare. "There she is!" she shrieked, pointing at me like I was vermin. "The little tramp!" I froze, a towel half folded in my hands. "Lisa, what?" I began. "Oh, don't Lisa me," she snapped, striding toward me in expensive sneakers that somehow made her look even angrier. "I saw the pictures, don't play innocent." Behind her, Michael stood in the doorway, phone out, filming. Because of course he was. Aunt Lisa jabbed a finger at my chest. "Staying in the apartment above my husband's office? Walking around like you belong there? Do you think I'm stupid?" "I didn't—" "You seduced him," she spat. "That's what this is. Poor little orphan routine, looking for a rich man to latch onto, just like your mother." The room went dead silent. Even the humming of the dryer seemed to pause. I felt my face go hot. "That's not what—" "Don't lie," she screeched. "My husband told me you were trouble from the moment you walked in. Always lingering around, always needing something. I knew this would happen." She was unraveling visibly, hair coming loose, voice cracking, eyes wild. I glanced at her hands. They were shaking. Jerry came out from the back room then, wiping his hands on a rag. "Lisa," he said carefully, "you need to calm down." "Calm down? Calm down?" She swung toward him. "Do you have any idea what she's done? She's been playing all of us." Customers had their phones up now, recording, whispering. Aunt Lisa must have seen the cameras because that made her even louder. "She's a gold digger," she accused, "just like her mother, trying to climb her way into my husband's pockets." I took a shaky step back, throat burning. It felt like drowning, not in water, in shame. Shame I didn't earn. Shame she dumped on me anyway. Jerry stepped between us. "Lisa, leave before I call the cops." Aunt Lisa's face twisted. "This isn't over," she hissed. I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of girl you are." Then she stormed out, dragging Michael behind her. The door slammed again, the dryers hummed back to life, and the whole laundromat stared at me like I'd been stripped open. I swallowed hard, trying to keep the tears from rising. Jerry put a hand on my shoulder, gentle. "Kid, don't listen to her." But I already had. Every word, every accusation, every reminder that, in this family, my existence was somehow an offense. Later that night, I heard shouting from the office upstairs. Aunt Lisa's voice, high, sharp, vicious. "How dare you, in our building, with her?" Uncle Marcus's reply was muffled, low, but even through the walls I could hear the exhaustion. "And what about our marriage?" Aunt Lisa screamed. "Does that mean nothing to you?" The argument went on for hours. I sat on the apartment floor with my knees pulled to my chest, trying not to imagine that I'd destroyed their marriage, that I was the problem, that everything bad was somehow my fault. Old habits. Trauma habits. It wasn't until much later that I'd learn I was just the easiest person to blame because I wasn't allowed to defend myself. Not yet. The next morning, Uncle Marcus looked wrecked. Dark circles, hair uncombed, tie missing. He handed me a cup of coffee and managed a tired nod before heading out. No explanation, no apology, just silence. The silence hurt more than Aunt Lisa's screaming. Then my phone rang. "Mom!" I stared at the screen like it was a ghost. She hadn't called in months, not a single real phone call, just texts like, "Hope you're well," or "So busy this week, call later." But now she was calling. That alone made my stomach twist. I answered warily. "Mom?" "Oh, honey," she said, voice dripping with concern, so theatrical. I actually pulled the phone away from my ear in disbelief. "I'm hearing some very disturbing things." My heart sank. "From who?" "Well, people talk," she said breezily. "And apparently there are rumors about you and your Uncle Marcus, and, well, it just sounds very inappropriate." I felt the blood leave my face. "Mom, what? No, We're worried," she went on. "Derek and we thought it was time to check on you." Check on me. Now. After everything. I didn't get the chance to respond because she followed up with, "We're coming by. We're already in Chicago." I stared at the phone like it had just grown teeth. She was here? Why? No, I already knew why. Aunt Lisa had talked. Lisa had screamed. Lisa had blamed. And my mother who'd abandoned me without hesitation, had jumped on the first excuse to believe the worst about me. Because believing that meant she never had to face what she'd done. They arrived at the apartment 20 minutes later. Mom stepped inside like she was touring a shabby rental on the wrong side of town. "Oh, honey," she murmured, eyes judging everything. "This is quaint." Derek hovered by the door like the air offended him. I crossed my arms. "What do you want?" Mom tisked. "Sweetheart, no need for hostility. We just want to understand what's going on with you and Marcus." "There's nothing going on," I snapped. Mom gave a tight smile. "Well, you can see how it looks." "How it looks to who?" I shot back. "Aunt Lisa? Michael? People who hate me?" Mom flicked her hand dismissively. "Let's not make this dramatic. We're just concerned about your intentions." "Intentions?" My voice cracked with disbelief. "You think I'm trying to get money from Marcus?" She shrugged like it was obvious. "Living here, working for him, getting close to him. Sweetheart, it's clever. Truly. I'm impressed you thought of it at your age." Something in me snapped. You don't come back from certain words, certain realizations, certain cold, hard truths that land like a punch. "You abandoned me," I said. "You left me with people who treated me like garbage. You never called. You never asked if I was okay, and now you're accusing me of—" "Oh, stop," Mom interrupted. "I was grieving, and Derek and I had a lot of responsibilities." "To your new life?" I asked sharply. "Your yachts? Your cocktail parties? Your Instagram aesthetic?" Her jaw tightened. "You don't understand adult relationships, I know," she said. "Marcus was your father's brother. Anything he has, anything they built together, is something I'm entitled to as your father's widow." "Ex-wife," I corrected. "You remarried less than a year after he died." She glared. "I deserve something out of all this." "No," I said, "you don't." Derek stepped forward then, puffing up like a frog. "Listen here, young lady." "No," I cut him off. "You listen. I know exactly why you're both here. You heard I was working with Marcus. You got scared I might learn something, earn something, become something, and you panicked." Mom flushed. "How dare you speak to me like—" "How dare you?" I shot back. "How dare you pretend you care about my welfare when all you care about is money?" The words poured out of me. Months, years of swallowed anger finally breaking free. "Where were you when Aunt Lisa charged me rent at 15? When I worked 2 jobs? When I slept in my car? When I got bronchitis from the cold? When Michael filmed me homeless and you didn't even pick up the phone? Mom's face drained of color. She looked at Derek in panic. He looked everywhere except at me. I walked to the door and opened it. "Get out," I said, "both of you." Mom sputtered, "Lena, you're being unreasonable." "No," I said, voice sharp and steady. "For the first time in my life, I'm being reasonable." They hesitated. So I added, "By the way, Mom, that pantsuit makes you look desperate." She gasped. Derek grabbed her arm. "Let's go." As they left, I heard her mutter through the thin hallway walls. "I told you this would happen. That little gold digger is going to take everything." I sat down on the floor after the door shut, hands shaking, heart pounding, breathing uneven. Not from fear, from clarity, from knowing exactly where they stood, and that they'd crossed a line they could never uncross. I didn't know yet that the next betrayal was 11 times bigger, that Derek and Aunt Lisa weren't just cruel. They were criminals, and they were planning to disappear, together. After the showdown with Mom and Derek, the world went strangely quiet. Not peaceful quiet, heavy quiet, like the air in a room right before a storm breaks the windows. Aunt Lisa didn't come screaming back into the laundromat. Uncle Marcus didn't say a word about the fight upstairs. Mom didn't call again. Derek vanished into whatever expensive hole he crawled out of. For 5 days, nothing happened. And that silence? That was the warning we didn't recognize. It broke on a Wednesday night, just after my shift started. I'd barely clocked in when the laundromat door slammed open. So hard, I thought the glass might crack. Michael stood there, but for the first time since I'd known him, he wasn't smirking. He wasn't holding his phone up to film me. He wasn't rolling his eyes. He looked sick. Not physically, emotionally sick. Like he'd seen something that cracked the world open and he didn't know how to hold the pieces. "Where's Marcus?" he asked, voice tight. I blinked. "He's doing inspections tonight. What's—" "I need him," Michael said, stepping inside. "Now." "Michael, what happened?" He didn't answer. He just thrust a tablet toward me. Aunt Lisa's iPad. Unlocked. I didn't want to look. Something in my body whispered that whatever was on that screen was going to change everything. But Michael shoved it into my hands. "Read the last message," he said. The notification at the top was from a contact saved as D. "Everything's ready for next week. Lisa, baby, we're finally going to be free." My stomach plummeted. Derek?" I whispered. Michael nodded once, jaw trembling. I swiped up. More messages, dozens. "We just need one last transfer. Marcus won't suspect a thing. I can't wait to leave this life behind. Pack lightly. The passports will be ready by Friday. After this, no one will find us. I'll make sure the girl doesn't get a dime." I felt my blood turn cold. Lisa and Derek, together, planning to run away, with Marcus's money. Michael collapsed into a chair, burying his hands in his hair. "She was gonna leave us," he choked. "She was gonna leave me and Rebecca. She wasn't even taking us, just disappearing." I sat beside him, stunned. They weren't just cheating. They weren't just cruel. They were criminals. I reached for my phone with numb fingers and called Uncle Marcus. He answered on the second ring. "Everything okay?" "No," I said. "You need to come to the laundromat, now." He arrived in under 3 minutes. Michael stood. His hands shook as he held out the iPad. "Uncle Marcus, you need to see this." Marcus took the device, glanced at the text preview, then slowly scrolled. His face didn't change. Not shock, not anger, not even sadness. Just nothing, like someone flipped a switch and turned the human part of him off. When he finished reading, he handed the iPad back just as calmly. "Call my lawyer," he told me. "Now." I obeyed. Marcus stepped outside, dialing someone else. His voice was low, clipped, steady. Inside, Michael paced, muttering, "She wasn't even going to say goodbye. She wasn't even—" I put a hand on his arm. And for the first time, Michael, my tormentor, the boy who filmed me homeless, leaned into me and cried. Not dramatic sobbing, not performative. Silent, shaking, real. Because betrayal feels the same in every language. Even when you're the golden child. Even when you thought you were safe. Within an hour, Marcus's lawyer arrived. Then an accountant. Then a second lawyer. Then 2 men in suits who introduced themselves only by first name and quiet authority. They spread files across the laundromat tables. Documents, bank transfers, invoices, shell corporations, fake maintenance companies. All run by Lisa. All funneling money out of Marcus's business. One accountant held up a printed spreadsheet. "They've moved nearly $1 million already," he said. "The total planned theft is estimated at $4.3 million. Michael's breath hitched. "And," the accountant added, "some of these withdrawals appear to come from the college funds set aside for the children." Michael and I both froze. Rebecca's college fund, Michael's college fund, gone. Lisa hadn't just been planning to run away. She was funding her escape with her own children's future. Michael's knees buckled. He sat down hard on a laundry cart. "Oh my God," he whispered. "Oh my God, she really didn't care." Rebecca found out the next day. She showed up at my apartment at midnight, mascara streaked down her cheeks, hair messy, clutching a backpack. "She stole my tuition," she said in a hoarse voice. "She stole my future, my mother." A sob cracked through her. "My mom was going to run away with your stepdad and leave us behind." She sat on my floor and cried like a child. And here's the strangest part. I didn't hate her. Not anymore. I knew what betrayal felt like. It didn't matter if you grew up in a mansion or a Toyota. Pain was pain. I handed her tissues. She apologized for bullying me. I told her she had enough to deal with without adding guilt to the pile. Then she asked the question no child should ever have to ask. Why wasn't I enough for her to stay? I didn't have an answer. Over the next week, everything escalated. Marcus had EAT tracing every account, his lawyers compiling evidence, his accountant rebuilding financial trails, a private investigator identifying meetings between Lisa and Derek. The FBI got involved quietly. Apparently, stealing millions while planning to flee the country is very much their jurisdiction. We kept everything secret. Rebecca stayed in my studio for 3 days, sleeping on my futon, wearing my Target sweatpants, smelling like my cheap shampoo. Michael worked at the laundromat after school, fixing machines with surprising skill. The three of us, kids who'd grown up resenting each other, became the only people any of us could trust. Even Ethan pulled closer. He'd heard whispers through mutual friends. His ex, Sabrina, tried to stir up drama. "Isn't this just proving the rumors about your girlfriend and her uncle?" But Ethan shut it down. He came by after my shifts with hot chocolate, sat on the floor of my tiny studio apartment, and said quietly, "I should have been there sooner." Ethan wasn't perfect, but he stayed, and that meant something. Finally, Marcus spoke the words that marked the turning point. "We're confronting them at Michael's birthday party." I blinked. "At the party?" Marcus nodded slowly. "Everyone will be there. They won't be able to run. The FBI will be nearby waiting for the signal." Rebecca looked sick. Michael looked hollow. I felt the ground tilt. But Marcus was calm. "Tomorrow," he said, "everything changes." None of us slept that night. I kept imagining Lisa's face when she realized the net had closed. And Derek's, and Mom's. There are moments your life splits in two, before and after. This was the knife's edge between them. Michael's 18th birthday was supposed to be one of those glossy, suburban milestones. Catered food, a backyard full of teenagers, a DJ blasting music over the heated pool, parents mingling with wine in hand, everyone pretending life was perfect. Instead, it became the day the truth detonated, and none of us would forget it. Aunt Lisa was in rare form that morning. She floated around the kitchen, arranging charcuterie boards, checking the catering trays, forced smiling at the staff she'd hired for the event. Her voice was sugary, clipped, manic. "Michael, honey," she called, "don't forget to be downstairs at 2 for pictures." Michael, pale and nauseous, mumbled, "Sure, Mom." Rebecca elbowed me in the hallway. She doesn't suspect a thing. Her voice trembled. I couldn't blame her. Confronting your own mother for stealing millions, not exactly something they prepare you for in high school. Outside, the party crews were setting up the mini golf course Marcus had paid for weeks earlier. There were balloons tied along the fence, colored lights framing the patio, the kind of party that would normally make people whisper, "Wow, they really went all out." If only they knew. Meanwhile, Marcus wasn't in party mode at all. He stood by the grill, just for appearances, giving low, clipped instructions to his lawyer and 2 men in suits who blended so well into the crowd they almost didn't seem real. Agents. The FBI had arrived. Quiet. Waiting. Guests started showing up around 2 p.m. BMWs. Mercedes. 1 Tesla. Parents dressed in athleisure pretending it wasn't expensive. Michael's classmates with their practiced Instagram smiles. Rebecca and I stood near the drink station, scanning the crowd. Everything looked normal. Too normal. Lisa greeted everyone with that sharp, dazzling smile, hugging people she'd gossip about later, blowing air kisses, playing hostess like she hadn't been planning to flee the country in less than a week. Derek and my mother arrived around 2:30. Derek carried a huge, elaborately wrapped box, probably some bribe for Michael. Mom wore a brand new designer dress. Her smile was carefully curated for photos. I turned away before she could spot me. Ethan showed up not long after, even though he wasn't officially invited. He slipped next to me, brushing his fingers lightly against my hand. "You okay?" he whispered. I shook my head. Not even close. He stayed anyway. At 4 p.m. sharp, Marcus's lawyer walked in. That was the cue. The lawyer, a calm man in his early 50s, carried a thick folder. The instant Aunt Lisa saw him, she froze. And for the first time since I'd known her, I watched fear flicker across her face. "Family," Marcus said loudly, clapping his hands once. "Inside. Now." Parents, kids, everyone went quiet. The workers paused. Michael swallowed hard. Mom stepped forward, exasperated. "Marcus, can this wait? This is Michael's birthday, not some—" "It cannot wait," he said, voice flat. Inside, in the living room, the lawyer placed the folder on the coffee table. The room filled with the soft rustle of expensive clothes, the faint hum of the air conditioner, the nervous breaths of 3 guilty adults who thought they had more time. Marcus stood tall and pointed to the documents. "Lisa," he said. "Derek, sit." They didn't move. "Sit," he repeated. They sat, slowly. Mom hovered behind them, frowning, confused. The lawyer began laying out papers. Bank statements, corporate transfers, fake invoices, screenshots, email threads, recorded call transcripts. With every page he placed down, Derek's face drained another shade. Aunt Lisa tried to keep her mask on, but her eyes darted, panicked, calculating, looking for exits. "Marcus," she finally said, voice cracking, this is ridiculous, obviously fake." Marcus lifted the iPad Michael had given him. "Really?" he asked. "Is this fake too?" He tapped the screen, and the iPad began playing an audio recording. Lisa's voice, Derek's voice, laughing, plotting, planning. "He trusts me completely. Once the last transfer clears, we'll be on a beach by next week. That girl won't get a dime." Mom's face snapped toward Derek. She froze, completely, like someone had unplugged her from reality. Derek lifted his hands weakly. "Honey, I can explain." Mom didn't even let him finish. She lunged. Actually lunged. She grabbed her purse, full of metal buckles and God knows what else, and began hitting him with it. "You liar! You thief! You used me! You used my money!" It took 2 FBI agents and Marcus to pull her back. Aunt Lisa tried to stand and bolt for the door. She didn't make it a full step. A female FBI agent grabbed her by the arm, flipping her wrist behind her back in one smooth motion. "Lisa Anderson," the agent said calmly, "you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit wire fraud, embezzlement, and attempted interstate flight to avoid prosecution." Derek barely tried to resist as they cuffed him. "Wait, please, this is a misunderstanding." "It's a $4 million misunderstanding," Marcus said coldly. Even then, the most horrifying part wasn't the arrest. It was Michael and Rebecca. They stood side by side, watching their mother being handcuffed. She didn't look at them, not once, not even a flicker. Their mother, who had raised them, fed them, kissed their foreheads on picture day, walked out the door with the FBI without sparing either child a single word. I watched Michael's face crumple. Rebecca's hand flew to her mouth. I've seen heartbreak. I've lived heartbreak. But I'd never seen anything like this. A betrayal so total it hollowed them out from the inside. Ethan slipped his hand into mine. His thumb brushed my knuckles, a small anchor in a collapsing universe. Mom sank onto the couch, sobbing into her hands. "He stole everything," she whispered. "All of it. The insurance, my savings, everything your father left me. Derek took it all." For a moment, I didn't feel anger toward her, just pity. She'd sold her soul for status, and her shiny new husband had emptied her bank account while smiling for her selfies. Marcus didn't soften. He turned to Michael and Rebecca. "You kids are staying with me," he said gently. They nodded without argument. They had nowhere else to go. And I realized something as I looked around that shattered, expensive living room. Sometimes family isn't who raises you. Sometimes it's who stays when the truth hits. Sometimes it's who catches you after the fall. And sometimes it's the people who learn the hard way what betrayal looks like. Outside, the flashing lights faded. Inside, the birthday balloons drooped. Rebecca leaned on my shoulder, mascara smudged, but eyes resolute. Michael sank onto the couch, staring at the floor. Ethan squeezed my hand. And Marcus looked at all of us like we were something new. Not burdens, not charity, not obligations. A family in the ruins of the old one. We had no idea what the next months would bring. But for the first time, we weren't facing it alone. The weeks that followed the arrests felt unreal, like living inside someone else's life, someone else's aftermath. But slowly, painfully, pieces began to fall into place. Pieces we never expected. Pieces we didn't know we needed. Mom was a wreck. After the FBI handed over financial evidence, it became clear Derek had drained almost everything she'd inherited from my dad. He'd manipulated her, lied to her, handed her papers disguised as routine financial updates, and convinced her to sign them without reading. She went from designer handbags and yacht parties to crying in a rehab facility lobby, clutching a paper cup of lukewarm coffee while Marcus arranged payment. Not because he had to, because despite everything, my dad had asked him, once, to look after her too. I didn't talk to her for a while, not out of spite, I just didn't know how to. How do you speak to someone who abandoned you and then fell apart in front of you for entirely different reasons? One day, visiting her in rehab, she whispered, "I'm sorry, I didn't know how to grieve. I just ran from everything, including you." For the first time, I believed she meant it. But forgiveness wasn't a light switch. It would take time. If we had a future, it would be a slow rebuild, not an instant fix. As for Rebecca and Michael, their lives were shattered, then rebuilt from scratch. They moved into my studio at first. Yes, all three of us, sharing one bathroom, one futon, one tiny closet. Rebecca learned that Target shampoo works fine. Michael learned how to unclog a shower drain after she used an entire can of hairspray. I learned that sharing space with two teenagers was chaotic, but not lonely. Marcus eventually moved them into a small rental unit he owned, just 2 doors down. Not luxurious, not private school, not designer wardrobes, but safe, honest, real. They got jobs at the laundromat. Rebecca, surprisingly, was incredible with customers. Warm, chatty, and patient, in a way I had never seen from her before. Michael turned out to be naturally gifted with machines. He could diagnose a dryer by sound alone. Humility, they learned it the hard way. But they learned. Ethan stayed beside me through everything. Supportive, patient, never flinching when things got complicated, never questioning my past or resenting my family's chaos. His ex, Sabrina, tried to stir things at first, telling people I was Marcus's little pet project and that Ethan was being naive. Ethan shut that down hard. He told her, "Lena isn't a rumor, and she's none of your business." I didn't know I could love someone more for a single sentence, but there it was. He never made himself the center of the story. He just made sure I wasn't carrying it alone. One crisp morning, Marcus called us all into the laundromat office. Me, Rebecca, and Michael. He placed 3 envelopes on the table, each one with our name on it. My hands shook a little as I opened mine. Inside was a printed letter and a key. The letter read, "Your father asked me to teach you how to survive without help. You've done that. Now it's time to learn how to build something with help. If you'll accept it, this laundromat and the properties surrounding it are yours to manage. Not as charity, as partners, as family. Marcus." I looked up at him, stunned. "You can say no," he said, "but I'd rather you didn't. Your dad believed you'd take this farther than he ever could." My throat closed up. Michael whispered, "He left us something?" Marcus nodded. "Your father helped me build everything you see. He may not have invested money, he didn't have any, but he invested sweat, ideas, and trust. That counts more than cash. I'd be dead without him. So yes, this is partly his, and now it's yours." I cried. Not the broken sobbing of before. This time it was warmth, grief and love twisted together, finally being allowed to breathe. Rebecca cried too. Michael pretended he wasn't crying, but he absolutely was. For the first time, the 3 of us weren't cousins suspended awkwardly between rich and poor, cruelty and compassion. We were partners. We were equals. We were finally family. Months passed. The laundromat thrived under the 3 of us. Michael revamped the machines. Rebecca created a rewards program customers loved. I handled the books, the schedules, the planning, the expansions Marcus hinted about. We grew. Together. Mom got better, slowly. She apologized again, properly, without excuses. It didn't fix everything, but it planted something. A seed, maybe a future. Maybe not, but something. 1 year after the night Marcus found me freezing in my car, we visited my dad's grave. Marcus told stories I'd never heard, stories of my father building machines with scrap metal, tutoring neighborhood kids for free, helping friends move even when he worked double shifts. "He was the best of us," Marcus said quietly. Rebecca took my hand. Michael stood on my other side. Ethan held my shoulder. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like a girl who had been thrown away. I felt like someone standing at the beginning of something new. Something whole. Something earned. I walked back to the laundromat later that day, our laundromat, and unlocked the office door with the key Marcus had given me months earlier. Sunlight streamed through the dusty windows. The hum of the machines felt steady, comforting, alive. This tiny building, this place that had once been my freezing shelter, then my salvation, was mine now. Ours now, built on my father's legacy, strengthened by Marcus's stubborn faith, rebuilt alongside two cousins who'd become siblings, supported by a boyfriend who'd stayed through chaos when others would have run. I breathed in the scent of detergent, warm dryers, and possibility. And I realized, although I lost the family I thought I had, I gained the one I needed. Although life broke me, it didn't end me. And although I started this story alone and homeless in a car, I wasn't alone now.